I had a customer tell me something really interesting the other day, and it was that he was only interested in either a 1500 or a 3500 single rear because the payload on a 2500 isn't high enough and it's a waste of money. Is that true? We're going to talk about it today. Now, it's not the first time I've heard something kind of like that, and so I wanted to jump on and talk about it. I asked that gentleman, are you planning on getting a different size trailer for what you're looking to do if you do get the 1 ton, or would it be the same? And he said, no, it would be the same. And I found that really interesting because I know Ram, particularly on the 2500 segment, is a little bit lower on the payload. I'll put this one's payload up right here. But that's still a lot more than a 1500, right? It's not, even if it's not a ton more than some of the other 1500s on the market, there's still a lot to be said for a diesel. You guys know the Cummins, man. You got the exhaust brake, things like that. The duty cycle life of the engine is still significantly more on something like this. You have bigger brakes, a bigger truck, the whole 9 yards. So that's what really led me to this topic. Is a 2500 a waste of money? Should you just get a 3500 single rear, 1 ton single rear? Or are there some actual benefits to something like a 2500? We're going to talk about all of that in this video. The big reason that Ram's payload is a little bit lower than a lot of others in the 3/4 ton segment is because they use this crazy 5-link coil. I don't know if you can really see that with the A-arm setup, which absolutely the payload is not nearly as high as something like a leaf spring setup. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Now, this video isn't about this particular truck, but this is a 2024 2500 Laramie Granite Color Night Edition. I absolutely love this color scheme. It's for sale here at Tempe Ram here in Tempe, Arizona. Speaking of which, it's about 1,000 degrees out here, so believe me, I'm suffering for y'all. I'll give you a quick walkthrough. I'll put the window sticker up right now. You can check it out if you want to, and I'll put my email down below if you are interested in this one or any other truck. So this particular one being a Laramie, you guys already saw the payload. I'll put that up again. Power folding mirrors, all your fancy gadgets for the mirrors, leather seats, heated and cooled. Doesn't have the new digital display, but it does have the bigger one in between the clusters. 12-inch screen. By now you guys know the trucks pretty well. You guys know I'm not really the channel that breaks every truck down super in depth. If you are interested in some videos like that, I'll leave a link to a channel called the O2 Cummins Ram. That is Collin who works here, and he does a lot better job at some of that stuff than I do. But as we were talking about, this truck's a 2500, right? Payloads on these trucks are not even close to that of even this truck, equipped almost identically. It's a 3500 version of pretty much the same truck. I'll put the payload to this truck right here. This one has the high output, the ice in, this has the motor that many people think is really the way to go with Ram. And then of course you have stuff like this, your big dog dualies. I like to call this one thick Sheila. It's pretty big. Anyways, super capable, 410 rear end, 50-gallon fuel tank. I mean, that is a workhorse, right? One truck we are missing here is a 35 or 2500 long bed. But again, more just talking about the segment itself. So who is something like a 2500 really suited for? Well, I think that answer is pretty simple. It's suited really well for the guy that has a fairly significantly sized camp trailer that still wants a diesel, still wants the longevity, the lifespan, and still wants that legendary Cummins exhaust brake, right? Like I say, even though your payload ratings on paper aren't that much different, it's still a significantly different experience towing even 10,000, 15,000, well, particularly 15, but more in that 8 to 12 neighborhood with this 3/4 ton truck versus a 1500. While both may be capable on paper, this truck is still significantly better for handling a weight load like that. Speaking of that exhaust brake, man, these Rams exhaust brakes are phenomenal. They slow you down so much with just barely touching the brake. That exhaust brake kicks on, that transmission downshifts, man, you will come to a stop in a hurry. That's something that you're not going to get on a 1500. Now, they do have engine brakes, trans brakes, whatever you want to call it, but they don't hold a candle to anything like the Cummins exhaust brake. Now, not that anything else really does either. We all know that. But as a general topic, a 3/4 or 1 ton truck is going to slow down a load significantly better than a 1500/ a half ton. The other thing about a 3/4 ton is from a daily driver perspective. It rides so much smoother, particularly in the Ram side with that coil rear end. It rides so much better than the 1 tons. It's really not that much worse than like a 1500, which is incredible because Ram as of late is known for its ride quality, particularly on the 1500 side of things, right? This truck rides so butter smooth that to drive it around every day is really not a bother, which is some of the complaints you used to hear of the heavy-duty trucks. The other thing is, back in the day, I remember people pretty much had a 1500 or a half-ton. They had a 3/4 ton, or they had a dually, right? I didn't see a lot of 1-ton single rear trucks hanging around back in the day. I personally, one of my favorite trucks I've ever owned is a 2004 F350. Yes, it was a 6.0. Save me the lecture. I know all about it. Believe me, that one was fully deleted, the whole 9, bulletproof, blah, 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 all those hot buttons. It had all of that stuff done. I towed with that truck probably 2 to 3 times a week for quite a while. It held up great. Not the point of this conversation. I'm not trying to defend 6-liter Power Strokes by any stretch of the imagination, but I had that truck and I really loved it. But when I bought that truck, it wasn't really because it was a 1-ton by any means. Wasn't for any payload reasons or anything like that. It just happened to be a really good deal at the place I used to work at the time. It was a single rear. I didn't want a dually, and rather it was a 1-ton single rear or a 3/4 ton single rear. Really didn't make much of a difference to me because that's what I remember back in the day. It wasn't that much different to go from a 3/4 to a 1-ton single rear, at least in most people's mind. Where now man, 1-ton single rear trucks are almost all the rage because there's so much kind of dogma about, the 3/4 ton side on the payload side, which is, again, it's not necessarily not true. It just depends, what are you trying to do? If you want to tow 25,000 pounds on your gooseneck or pull your 18,000 pound 40-foot fifth wheel, then yeah, probably not. And there is a significant portion on the lower end, say sub 8,000 pounds, 10,000 pounds, that if you're only towing it 3 times a year, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to jump up into a diesel and have that added expense. But if you're going to tow, believe me, even 8, 10, 12,000 pounds feels so much better with a truck like this than it does a 1500. It's really unbelievable. And again, it's not, don't come after me with your 1500 saying how you tow it all the time and it feels great. That's a good thing. The 1500 trucks are so capable compared to what they used to be that you can get away with it. But longevity, durability, life cycle, duty cycle, all those things on something like this are such an improvement with the bigger frame, heavier truck, bigger brakes, exhaust brakes, things like that. There is still so many benefits to a 3/4 ton over a 1500, but people act like, you either need a 1500 or a 3500, and that's just not really true. So again, I'm not saying that this truck can't tow, but I'm saying your experience towing with this truck versus our 2500 that we're driving here is going to be significantly different. The bigger trucks just handle the weight so much better. But again, there are people that the 1500 makes sense for, but I think the saying of you should either be in a 1500 or into a 3500 is a little bit blown out of the water. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, there's certainly many scenarios where you should be in a 1-ton truck. In fact, a lot of people that are in a 3/4 ton should be in a 1-ton or maybe even a dually. But I personally think it's awesome to have kind of a breakup of categories where there's actually a difference between a 1500, a 2500, and a 3500. I think that's perfect. I don't think you want your 2500s and 3500s to be basically the same thing. There's a lot of other benefits of jumping up to a 1-ton that I didn't give it over. Some things like bigger axles and blah, blah, blah. Again, I'm not a super in-depth kind of video guy. This is just kind of a broad stroke overall discussion about the classes themselves, which, like I say, I think it's incredible how smooth these trucks ride. They're absolutely a joy to drive. Tons of power. You still get that exhaust brake, but they're still a lot smoother on a daily basis. Now, like I say, to me, that's not necessarily a huge deal. I drove a 1-ton single rear Ford. You guys can imagine how that thing rode on a daily basis. I didn't care. I liked it. But if you don't like it and you want something that rides smoother and you want to tow a significant, fairly significant amount of weight on a fairly regular basis, the 2500 is really the spot for you. Look what I found, a 3500 single rear. This is my personal favorite configuration. But again, it's not for everybody, right? But that's really the main point of the conversation, guys. If you are that guy that a 2500 might make sense for, but you're kind of leaning one way or the other. Don't let everything you see on the internet about the payloads necessarily drag you down, especially if what you tow is well within the payload. Believe me, if you can get the job done with a 1500, you're going to be more than okay with any of the 3/4 tons. But that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this video, guys. Like I said, just wanted to have a quick chat about that. Drop a like, leave a comment, don't forget to subscribe, and like I say, if you are interested in anything you see out here, shoot me an email and let me know. I'll leave a link in the description below. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day.